Hello everyone, and welcome back to 1 Year of Drawing. This is part 4. If you haven't watched the other 3, then go back and watch those to get caught up. This week we're going over different kinds of shading. These are just a few different styles that I've kind of become familiar with over the years. As you can see, some of these they look a little better than the others, but we're going to go through, we're going to look at each one individually. I'm going to talk about it, kind of like what I like about it, what I don't like, and then we'll try to see which ones work for me and which ones don't. So first off, we're going to look at these cubes up here in the top corner. I try to imagine these with the light source coming from behind the object and slightly to the left, so that the most amount of light would land on the opposite side, the opposite face of what we can see on this side. So that means the face that's closest to us is the one that's going to be the darkest. In this first example up here in the corner, you can see that I'm using a hatching method. Well, not so much a hatching method, but just using lines that go across the length of the object, or the length of each face. And I also use the same method on this one here, except these are both a little different. They look kind of the same, but they're actually a little different. On this one here, I did each side or each face individually. So the lines here on this side are darker and much closer together, and then you can see if I zoom in here that these lines here don't actually continue on from one face to the next. I started here on this face and went up, and then on this face I started here and went down. And so there's no continuity from face to face. You can see that on the top here too. Let me try to find a good example. This line here, it doesn't connect to any line on this side. And then on this one, on the other side, I started off by doing the face that was the lightest, with the lightest shading, and bringing those lines across the entire body of the object, overlapping those faces, and then moving on to this side, I started adding in more lines to indicate that it was a darker side, as you're saving less light from the light source. And then I started from this side and brought it up, and I stopped it so that it wouldn't go onto this top face. But then when I got down into this area where I could bring it up and then lay it over onto this face and then stop it there before it carried on to the top side, is what I was doing with this one. It looks a little cleaner, a little neater, and I think I like doing it like this a little more than like this. They both look alright, but this one on this side looks a little cleaner, it's a little nicer to look at. Next I moved on to kind of a cross-hatching method, where I did the same kind of thing that I did with this one, but instead I brought lines coming across the face, intersecting perpendicular with the lines that were kind of already here on this one here. So that kind of gave this object kind of it looks like a flannel shirt, I guess, where the lines are all intersecting. I think this one looks alright. I think I think I kind of like this one more. It just looks a little nicer in my opinion. With this one, there's a little too much going on. Maybe I used too many lines. Maybe I need to back off on the lines a little bit and try to back off on those lines proportionally from face to face, so that it still kind of keeps the same amount of shading on each face. It just looks a little cleaner, a little nicer. So yeah, I think I would prefer this one over this method. And then on this one I just did a really basic solid shade on each face. Now this isn't really one that I want to gravitate towards. You can use it depending on like your kind of light source and the effects that are going on in whatever scene that you're kind of setting up, whatever scene you're creating. But it's not really, there's not really much to it. It doesn't look bad, but it also doesn't look great. So I'm going to try to stay away from that. Moving on from there, I started experimenting with some spheres. This one on the left here, I was using the airbrush within Krita. Actually, I don't know if it's in Krita. It might be in the brush add-ons that I got, the brush pack. But either way, I used kind of an airbrush tool to make this one. The airbrush is really nice because it kind of lets you do a really smooth and gradual transition over the entire face of the object, whatever you're trying to shade. It's pretty easy to use. It takes some getting used to. I like to use a few different layers in order to kind of set down a base and then use a layer to darken it up kind of as I go across. That way I don't get any rough transitions. It's a little smoother. So I really like using that. It just kind of ends up looking really nice in the end. Um, Whether or not the shading is exactly accurate, um, I'm not sure. I'll have to put some more work into it, some more time, and try to perfect it, get a little better. But it does look nice. It looks nicer even if it's not completely accurate. So I like using that. This one here I use kind of a hatching method. It's just a ton of lines kind of thrown on the object, onto the sphere. So trying to make a little transition between the lighter area here and the darker around the back. I don't think it looks bad, but could it look better? Yeah. So I'm gonna have to work on that. I do like the hashing method. It's a little harder to do it digitally than it is with an actual pencil. I feel like that you have a little more control over the intensity and the darkness of the lines rather than in digital. Um, I felt like it was a little more difficult to control. So that might just be a user error kind of thing. I'll have to practice and play around with it and see what I can do. And then I moved on to kind of a stippling method where the areas that are the darkest have the highest concentration of dots and also the darkest dots. Um, and then as you transition to a lighter area, it becomes less concentrated and also a little lighter. And then eventually it just kind of ends up with no dots. And I really you try to get the transition to be pretty smooth. I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. I don't think I'm super accurate with the dots that I used with the transition. I feel like it could be a lot better, and I'm gonna have to work on that. Just kind of like everything else here. But yeah, I am aware that this isn't really that great, so I'm gonna work on it. And then lastly, I use these two cylinders here. This one here, it looks awful. I know what you're thinking. It looks pretty awful. You're right. It's pretty bad. I just used the straight ink tool. I tried to see what I could do. It's not easy to do the transition. I guess I'm not super used to the digital like pressure sensitivity yet to try to get the exact pressure that I want. I guess I'm not really used to the whole pressure sensitivity thing with a digital tablet. I will be trying to practice this, trying to make it not look so rough. Um, Try to make it look a little nicer, a little smoother. Um, you can do it. I know you can. I've seen people do it. So I just need to put some time in to kind of get it better. And then this one here, I used the airbrush to do this again. Um, Kind of like what I did with the sphere up here. I used the same tool, and again, it turns out pretty well. Again, I think it needs to be a little darker on the back side here. It needs to be a little stronger of a transition. But overall, I think it looks pretty nice. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys this week. All I've been doing is looking into different shading methods, so watching other people do it, seeing how they kind of go about using the different methods in different situations. Um, and it's just something that's going to take time, and I'm going to keep working on it. I'll probably keep going with shading next week, and probably a few more weeks after that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.